Welcome to this second full review of the war. The clans have returned, ready for another galactic battle. This one, from my perspective, has been the most spectacular I've seen in a long time. The recent wars I've participated in were already incredible, and it's a delight to see the community still so passionate about this game. This video will shock you, as certain unknown details will be revealed. Some decisions and situations will be explained, shedding light on what really happened. It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, and the first Galactic War of September has begun. 6 factions have entered the battlefield, but already 3 are pulling ahead. First, there's CCC, a small but highly active clan. Then we have Ghost, the giant, the largest, oldest, and still the most active clan to date. And finally Marvel, who seems determined to win this war, with a much stronger start than their previous attempt. Quickly, the other 3 factions fell behind due to the sheer speed and efficiency of these leading clans. Mythics, for reasons known only to them, struggled from the start. Then Empire, unfortunately, expanded first into areas already claimed by CCC or Marvel. As for the Red faction, made up of Galconites and Highlander, they only started playing the next day. Ghost settled in the southwestern arm. CCC chose the same spot as the last war in the southern branch, and Marvel took the eastern arm. By the end of the first day, these 3 clans had a 2,000-point lead over the others. It looked like the war was headed toward a 3-way, a scenario where only 3 factions remain, leading to a phase of fortification in preparation for the final day, with little action until the chaotic last few hours. But on the second day, something unexpected happened. Ghost, Marvel, and CCC had doubled their points, as predicted, but 2 other factions were starting to expand, albeit lagging behind. Mythics positioned themselves in the northern branch, trying to establish dominance. The Reds, particularly Highlander, moved into the far northwestern branch. Despite this, the gap between these factions and the top 3 remained. With a bit of luck, we could have a 5-faction war, which would be far more interesting. Sadly, the 6th faction, the Empire, seemed to have already given up. Their slow start, due to bad luck, left them unable to recover. As the second day of war came to a close, we had 3 large galactic empires and 2 others trying to compete. Did you believe in them? I did too. But on the 3rd day, one faction made a bold, strategic move. This move set the entire war on fire, sparking drama that would last until the very end.
Mythics were poorly positioned on the map, exposed to the 3 other factions, but more, we failed to establish ourselves early.
I think just trying to expand, but I wasn't online very much, so I couldn't help a lot.
Yeah, sure. So first, we didn't expand in time, and as expected, we got attacked.
Yes, Mythics, one of the top 4 clans in the game, took too long to find their place on the map and expand. This was seen as a sign of weakness, and the other factions quickly took notice. But to take advantage of this, one had to act fast. One faction in particular stood to gain a lot from this. By taking out Mythics, they could claim an entire arm of the galaxy, and not just any arm, the northern arm, one of the most valuable. It's easy to defend, has high-value stars, and hosts constellations worth a ton of points.
So from day 1 and 2, we started off very good in expansion, I believe, and we were on track to securing 2 arms. While doing so, one of the arms we were going for, Mythics, were already expanding there, but very slowly. So we decided to go for the Blitz. As soon as we made the move on Mythics, we left certain stars untouched in the arm we were originally at, so we could secure the north arm as well.
Marvel had everything to gain by removing Mythics from this branch. It would give them a significant advantage for the rest of the war, as the northern arm, combined with their own, was easily defendable. The travel time between choke points was minimal, another advantage. But there was a flaw in their plan. While the strategy was sound, Marvel hadn't considered a possibility that would greatly impact them. Would Ghost and CCC their main competitors, allow them to grow that powerful and secure such a strategic advantage. Marvel was a formidable opponent, and letting them expand unchecked would have devastating long-term consequences. Ghost and CCC, meanwhile, were sharing the middle of the map with massive borders to cover. And though the Reds were expanding, they were too slow. With Mythics out of the picture and the Reds lagging, it was certain that the war would come down to a three-way. Both Ghost and CCC reached the same conclusion at the same time, without even consulting each other. Marvel could not be allowed to take that second arm, and Mythics could not be allowed to fall. Mythics had now become their best asset against Marvel. The plan was simple: distract Marvel, and buy Mythics enough time to reclaim the branch.
We had a slow start due to bad luck, which hindered our momentum. Even by the end of day 4, we only had one constellation, and eventually, we found more on day 5 to 6. We tried to help Mythics retain control of their arm by putting some hits into Marvel, but we couldn't stop them.
Ghost had shined on the first day but slowed down by the second and third, falling behind. CCC, on the other hand, had finished their expansion early and turned their attention to Marvel and Mythics. Entire squadrons from CCC and Ghost attacked Marvel, using stars that Marvel hadn't yet conquered in their own branches. From there, both factions launched their assault on Marvel, taking a dozen stars and breaking up constellations in the process, all to buy time for Mythics and distract Marvel.
My POV from this GM is that it was contest Marvel at all times from all factions. So from day 1 to 2, we started off very good in expansion. We were going for Mythics. Phantomplin literally flew from across the map to our arm and contested us.
As we were trying to wipe out Mythics, we found Ghosts and CCC kind of trolling us to keep Mythics alive, knowing Mythics would probably only hit Marvel.
While the initial assault succeeded, it quickly became clear that Marvel could take back the stars they lost while still attacking Mythics. This was likely due to Mythics lacking enough bucket power to hold back Marvel. In this case, any help was futile, as the joint attack's goal was to allow Mythics to push back Marvel, making Mythics a thorn in their side.
But we did not want to give up, and therefore we defended. Unfortunately, our bucket got worse by fighting, and we couldn't hold our stars anymore.
And then Marvel already attacked us, so we just tried to defend as long as possible, even though we didn't have much time or many members, and a bad bucket. So we fought, and then we got help from CCC and Ghost.
Help had arrived for Mythics. Marvel, fully aware of the threat that Mythics could become, was determined to eliminate them. By the end of the 4th day of the war, Mythics was still alive, but they had been expelled from the northern arm. Their survival depended solely on the aid provided by Ghost and CCC. One of the big winners in this situation was CCC, who took advantage of Marvel's attack on Mythics. CC seized the opportunity to capture about 20 stars from Marvel, establishing a foothold in Marvel's eastern arm. Another crucial detail: the Yellows, who had nothing to gain from attacking Marvel, also started harassing them while Marvel was focused on conquering Mythics. To recap, Marvel was attacking Mythics, with Mythics doing their best to defend, but ultimately being overpowered. Sensing the danger, Ghost and CCC intervened to prevent Marvel from securing a second arm. Meanwhile, the Yellows inexplicably joined the fray.
Now we're fully in the arm while killing Mythics and then a Vampire, and CCC was also trying to help Mythics in the process. As we got closer and closer and Mythics started falling, we woke up the next day to CCC breaking into our east arm, with both Ghost and CCC contesting us in the middle.
By the end of day 4, all factions had finished their expansion except Marvel, who was forced to defend itself against the other factions. The battle between CCC and Marvel intensified. Meanwhile, Ghost seemed to slow down their own assault on the Reds, which made little sense unless...
I was annoyed, to be honest. being paired with a GM participant who seemed to have no interest in playing as a team player. Mythic was single-handedly spending as many hits stacking 1 star as I was trying to capture or defend dozens of stars. But ghosts were more fair than they had to be. They understood the Mythic situation. I received numerous complaints that Marvel was alt grinding, and that too was annoying, as it was directed at us as well. Mythic's strategy wasn't very good. It was okay that at first, they were picking up cheap stars, but then they never made an effort to properly expand in their chosen arm. This led to their eventual demise, and allowed Marvel to expand there.
Marvel was now fighting on 2 fronts. Part of their forces was still trying to wipe out Mythics in the middle, while the rest tried to fend off CCC in the eastern arm. However, Ghost and CCC were no longer just trying to defend Mythics. They were actively preventing Marvel from finishing them off. The stars leading to Mythic's last bastion were claimed by Ghost and CCC, who reinforced them regularly to block any possible path to Mythics. The saga finally came to an end.
With us nearly being dead, cooperation with Ghost and CCC saved us, and we managed to stay alive. But Marvel wanted to finish what they started and wiped us out on Monday.
But as Marvel feared the powerful Mythics, they pushed through the stacked borders of Ghost and CCC and killed us.
There was even a joint effort by Ghost and CCC to block Marvel from reaching Mythics in the middle. But it failed as Marvel broke through our blockade to annihilate Mythics before we could react.
On the 6th day of the war, Marvel finally achieved victory over the third factions. Despite being shielded by CC and Ghost, Mythics could not survive the final assault launched by Marvel, whose sole goal was to eliminate them once and for all. This decision made sense. Who would allow a rival who swore to make them lose to stay alive? With Mythics gone, CCC was now firmly in first place, while Marvel had slipped to third. This time, it was Ghost attacking Marvel. Not to stop them from heading toward the mid, or to distract them from Mythics, but to prevent Marvel's ongoing assault on the Reds. Marvel had started attacking the Reds, which prompted Ghost to react. But why?
We tried to set up peace with the Red faction and told them if they could stack against Marvel, we wouldn't hit them. But Red failed to allocate their hits to defend from Marvel.
It became clear. Ghost had stopped their attack on the Reds a few days earlier, not because they found it too difficult or were too busy protecting Mythics. The truth was that Ghost had made a pact with the Reds. Ghost would protect them for the rest of the war, provided the Reds stacked their borders against Marvel. Marvel's attack on the Reds, under normal circumstances, would not have been a mistake. In fact, it was an expected move, given that the Reds were a much weaker faction than the others. However, this decision launched Marvel into a second conflict with Ghost. The timing couldn't have been worse. Marvel could neither effectively defend against Ghost, nor make significant progress against the Reds. They were bogged down in fights with 3 different factions. CCC continued harassing their eastern lines, while Ghost launched assaults in the northern middle to defend the Reds. The strain was beginning to show on Marvel. There's only so much a faction can endure after 3 days of continuous fighting, against multiple opponents in a conflict stretching across the entire galaxy. Marvel's players were logging in less, and their will to fight was fading. The conflict between Ghost and Marvel dragged on. Both factions continued to battle, one defending the Reds, the other attacking them. Marvel appeared to shift tactics, sending fewer players to face Ghost and adopting a more exhausting defensive strategy. At the same time, they pressed their assaults against the Reds, though these attacks were not yet yielding results. The reason was simple. Marvel couldn't deploy more players against either Ghost or the Reds, because they were still locked in a war on the Eastern Front with CCC. Fatigue was setting in. By the end of Day 8, however, a brief calm seemed to settle. The Reds, with Ghost's help, had managed to push Marvel back. Things escalated once again. The battle between Ghost and Marvel over the Reds intensified. Marvel launched another assault on the Reds, infiltrating deeper than before. Ghost had no choice but to retreat and defend the Reds again, but this time, it cost them dearly. CCC was now strong enough to keep Marvel occupied in the east while also attacking Ghost. On the 9th day, CCC attacked Ghost stars in the middle and managed to chip away at their points. Ghost couldn't respond effectively. They were still embroiled in the conflict with Marvel and couldn't deploy enough players to counter CCC.
This trolling seemed to turn into full-on teaming, whether or not that was the goal. We always saw CCC as the greatest threat due to their size and therefore high hit potency. So we were surprised to see Ghost seemingly only hitting Marvel for almost a week straight.
The situation remained unchanged. The Reds repelled Marvel for the second time. Meanwhile, the same battles continued elsewhere. CCC versus Marvel in the east, Ghost versus Marvel over the Reds, Marvel's attacks on the Reds, and CCC's incursions into Ghost's territory in the mid. There was action everywhere.
CCC or Ghost did attempt to provide some cover to buy us time to possibly deal with Marvel, and a couple of players did jump on Maffle's team to finally help defend against Marvel's attacks, though still not Maffle itself. But it was too little too late. We were eliminated before GM ended.
Marvel broke through their line twice, and the third time, the Reds had no strength left to fight. When it was clear they had no chance, we decided to grab some territory too. I was expecting a last-minute fight between the main contending factions of Ghost and CCC. My hopes were to block Marvel from mid before we fought.
With just a little over 30 hours left before GM ended, the Red faction was wiped out by both Ghost and Marvel. After more than 4 days of warfare between Ghost and Marvel over the Reds, Marvel finally managed to win the battle and destroy their lines of defense. This marked the end for the Red faction. With no reason to keep them alive, Ghost ceased aiding them, and both factions absorbed and divided the Reds' remaining territory. It was just in time because CCC had grown to an unimaginable size. They now led by more than 6,000 points, creating a massive gap between them and the second faction. CCC was no longer content to remain idle. They attacked Ghost, now their main threat, seizing many of Ghost's czars in the mid and even some in their branch. CCC had two goals: to extend their front line as much as possible and to take as many points from Ghost while they were preoccupied elsewhere. They remembered the outcome of the last war, and they knew that waiting would only lead to the same result. It was the final day. Unlike previous wars, where entire factions would patiently wait during the last hours to take advantage of surprise attacks, higher bucket counts, or more active players at the NCCC, the Green faction had a different idea in mind. They had carefully thought through the past few days and reached a conclusion. Why wait? According to their calculations, they had a superior bucket compared to the other factions. Ghost and Marvel, their remaining competitors, clearly had fewer hits left. Furthermore, Marvel's morale was at an all-time low. They had been battling several factions non-stop since the beginning of the war. Their bucket, upon verification, was also in poor shape. Ghost wasn't much better off. What if they turned the last 30 hours into a massive free-for-all, forcing the factions to fight everywhere? Marvel seemed on the verge of giving up. Perhaps a small push could finally demoralize them for good. CCC was confident in their ability to take on Ghost in a one-on-one battle, especially if they could concentrate the fight in the mid-region, where travel time between stars was minimal. The decision was made, and without further delay, put into action. They launched a full-scale assault against Ghost, aiming to capture as many points as possible and widen the front line. Ghost, unprepared for such a large-scale attack, was pushed back, and nearly all of their stars in the mid-region fell into CC hands. CCC was now far ahead of Ghost. They expected an epic showdown between themselves and the two remaining Titans. As anticipated, Ghost's response was slow at first. For nearly 20 hours before the end of the war, Ghost and Marvel endured relentless assaults. Although Ghost was a formidable clan, they were slow to mobilize, and CZZ suspected that Marvel had lost the will to fight altogether. But, as is often the case when overconfidence takes root, the backlash was severe. In a sudden and stunning move, Ghost made an impressive breakthrough in the mid-region, reducing the gap between them and CCC from 6,000 points to just 1,000 by obliterating 5 or 6 constellations. The giant had awoken, and just like in the last war, Ghost was ready to clash with CCC 15 hours before the war's end. CCC managed to push Ghost out of the mid-region again, but the last assault had drained them. The next one promised to be even more intense, as Ghost now had time to regroup and prepare for a much larger offensive.
Since Marvel wasn't really focused on the win and more on killing Mythic's faction. I don't know which one it was. We didn't expect them to do much damage on the last day. That's why we pushed Ghost in mid to secure a big lead. I was kind of afraid when they drained us down to about 13k points, breaking our constellations in mid, but we managed to push them back quickly.
CCC knew they couldn't afford to split their forces between two factions as they had in the last war. Marvel had been mostly inactive, but nothing was certain. A squad of players moved to the eastern border with Marvel and began capturing as many stars as possible. They encountered little resistance, as expected, and were able to take enough stars, even stealing a constellation and stacking choke points. Afterward, though Marvel launched a counterattack at one of the choke points, it was easily repelled. Marvel's spirit was definitively broken. They could no longer gain enough points to win or deliver a decisive blow to CCC. The number of hits needed to regain control of their territory was too high. And it was just in time, as what was happening on the other side of the galaxy was far from pretty. The battle for control of the mid-region had reignited and was reaching apocalyptic proportions. The hordes of Ghost players had finally joined the fight, and the number of stars captured and lost was staggering. The remaining CCC defenders were literally overwhelmed by the sheer number of Ghost players attacking from every direction, breaking countless constellations. Reinforcements from CCC's eastern front struggled to even contain the human tide at first. For several hours, the two mega factions fought fiercely, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. No matter how many stars Ghost captured, CC reclaimed just as many. And as the fight dragged on, it began to turn against Ghost. CCC had a much higher star production rate than Ghost, and was in a comfortable defensive position. Ghost had to expend more hits to capture stars than CCC needed to recover them. Despite Ghost's second wave managing to destroy several constellations and significantly reduce CCC's points, Ghost leadership had made a fatal error. They had assumed Marvel would keep fighting until the end. But after 2 weeks of constant warfare, Marvel's players were exhausted and saw no point in continuing the battle. If any players still had the energy, they chose not to participate.
Ghost pushed us out of mid, so CCC was able to hold our entire faction off with the 2 choke point stars of Lokoff and Peribyle. This was an extreme tactical error by Ghost that shredded both of our buckets and ensured we were not in the right geographic positions to help kill first place CCC.
CCC knew better than I did the extent to which Marvel had given up on the GM after depleting their bucket fighting small factions for minimal gains. CCC slowly took our territory, and we didn't fight back soon enough. Nor did we have adequate defenses set up against them. We tried to save our bucket for the last day, thinking Marvel would put in some effort against CCC as the score leader. But Marvel had completely given up. This made CCC's first mover advantage the deciding factor.
The way I see it, it was well played by CCC. They made sure to put themselves in a good position by taking the risk of securing all of mid, while also pushing into our eastern arm, making it hard for us to defend. But I do feel it was all versus Marvel at one point.
WeriTeneun wasn't entirely wrong. Although Marvel had initiated the attacks against Mythics and the Reds, they also had to defend themselves for 2 weeks against Ghost and CCC, with even the Yellow faction attacking them at one point, though they didn't last long. In this final one-on-one between Ghost and CCC, since Marvel was sadly unable to deliver a decisive blow, Ghost slowly but surely lost ground. So much so that 4 hours before the war's end, after an 8-hour battle for the mid-region, yes, 8 hours, Ghost had to concede defeat. They simply couldn't match CC's firepower in a one-on-one. In a disadvantaged position and without Marvel's intervention, Ghost had no hope of victory, as CCC led by nearly 6,000 points.
My POV is that we got underestimated. We had the worst arm and the worst borders. When Marvel fought Mythics and then the Red faction, Ghost had almost no doubt they were going to win this GM. If we hadn't pushed both of them back, we might have ended up losing. But the whole point is that they underestimated us.
Due to this rookie-like mistake, Ghost gave CCC an easy victory. However, CCC did a good job at making the absolute best of our bad circumstances. CCC maneuvered us where they wanted us very well, and former Marvel Cosmic Slayer PuffleMuf held off most of Marvel by himself that enemy. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads CCC one day. He deserves it.
I think the fact that we never really stopped and sat to stack chokes, the traditional strategy, had a lot to do with it. We kept pushing both Ghost and Marvel, and were content to have a very messy front in the mid, knowing it's a goldmine of production. These things were instrumental, that, and being online a lot, able to defend in real time, to never really allow the enemy a chance to get too deep.
We fought valiantly on the last day to break CCC's constellations in mid, but by that point, the GM was already over. Our fatal decision was not attacking before CCC in previous days.
The last GM was great and so competitive. We tried our best and played a lot just to stay in our top to -1 position. But CCC was more powerful than any clan in Galcon. With only 8 players, they managed to beat us. We lost to the high level of activity. We made a mistake, leading to another, or maybe we can call it a strategic misread. So that was the cause that led to our loss. GG CCC, and good luck in the next one.
In the final 4 hours, a few minor skirmishes continued, but no other large-scale assaults occurred. In the end, CC emerged victorious. GG to all, and here's to more epic battles in the future.